All right, let's get into chapter 11, Feeding the World. We'll do the first section in your notes packet on human nutritional requirements and how they're not always satisfied. Undernutrition is a huge problem across our world. 1 billion people do not have enough food to eat. 24,000 people starve to death every single day. That's 8.8 million people per year. Undernutrition is a condition in which people receive fewer calories than the minimum requirements. Average person needs about 2,200 kilocalories per day. It depends on different factors like age, gender, and your physical activity. Women need generally less than men, about 1,600 to 2,400 calories per day, and men need 2,000 to 3,000, again, depending on different factors. Undernutrition is a problem because of economics, politics, conflict, inefficiency in the food distribution itself. Most undernourished people live in developing nations. So on the opposite end of the spectrum is overnutrition. This is when someone might be receiving too many calories per day. Developed countries like the United States have abundant, cheap junk food, and people lead sedentary lives. This is how we can become have too much overnutrition, right? We have a lot of cheap food that's bad for you. In the US, 25% of adults are obese, and obesity can lead to type 2 diabetes, problems with stroke, hypertension, heart problems. Worldwide, 400 million people are obese. Malnutrition is a condition in which there's a shortness or shortage of nutrients in the body that the body needs. So while we can suffer from overnutrition, we might actually be malnourished because we're not getting the proper blend of vitamins and minerals and good fats, healthy fats, and all that stuff that we need to have a proper healthy diet. Malnutrition or malnourishment can lead to diseases. Let's talk about some of those diseases that we might find in developing countries. One's called kwashiorkor, and this is a disease in which a diet lacks protein or caused because a diet lacks protein or essential amino acids. This can occur when children stop breastfeeding, and you've probably seen pictures of this in maybe like National Geographic photos or something, right, where the child has bloated stomachs. There might also be mental and physical disabilities too associated with this disease. Another disease is marasmus, which is a protein deficiency, or it could be caused because there is an insufficient number of calories being taken in every single day. We see wasting or shriveling away of the body. Another disease could be a goiter, and you're seeing a picture of a goiter in the lower right-hand corner. This is what happens when the diet lacks iodine. You get a swollen neck, which is caused by an enlarged thyroid gland. Here in developed countries like the United States, we iodize our salt, and if we use iodized salt to season our foods, we will likely not get a goiter because we're getting enough iodine in the salt that we eat. But other developing countries don't have access to that usually. What are some other diseases involved? There's anemia, which is occurs when a diet is lacking in iron, right? What is anemia? This means that you don't have adequate healthy blood cells to carry oxygen throughout the body. Anemia could exist because we're not eating enough iron in the term, in the form of muscle meat from different animals. You can feel tired and weak. Another one is vitamin A deficiency, and this could lead to blindness in children, increased viral infections in adults. How can you get away from vitamin A deficiency? Having access to eating sweet potatoes, carrots, spinach, dark leafy vegetables. All of these contain vitamin A. Food security is this guarantee of an adequate, safe, nutritious, and reliable food supply. People who live in a food secure household don't have to worry about the foods that they eat. Not just the foods, the calories that they consume, but also the quality of the food too. People who are living in a food insecure household, about 36 million Americans do, don't have that guarantee of an adequate, safe, nutritious, and reliable food source. Some countries, larger populations might undergo famine, and this is when food insecurity is so bad that people actually die from it. And this has happened a couple times throughout human history. Why does food insecurity exist? Poverty, people can't afford it. This could exist for political reasons, like when refugees leave their food. And because crops oftentimes don't go to feed people, they go to feed the livestock, which ultimately goes then to feed the people. And if you remember, each time we move up a trophic level from the producers to the primary consumers, like we do from grass to cattle, we lose about 10% of energy due to respiration, right? So think about that for a second. It's kind of inefficient for us to feed all of those cattle at a higher area of the food web because of that loss, right? And so if we cut that out and we cut out meat maybe once or twice or all completely from our diet, then we would be eating directly from those producers and not having to waste that 10% as we move up to the trophic level. Because we are the next trophic level if you think about it. If we cut out the meat from our diets. Anyway, here's somebody to know that'll come up in discussions on famine and populations. Is Paul Ehrlich. He published a book in 1968 called The Population Bomb, kind of controversial. The battle, one of the quotes from the battle to feed all humanity is over. Hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. So Ehrlich argues that as the existing population was not being fed adequately, the Earth's population was growing too rapidly to expect sufficient improvements in food production to feed everyone. He further argued that the growing population will place escalating strains on all aspects of the natural world. So make sure you know Paul Ehrlich. Good. So what else is kind of these problems? So we can live in a food insecure area, and some of our food goes to actually not making food, but actually now to biofuels. And so maybe now, while we're trying to make the world better by using some of these biofuels, these fuels that are derived from organic materials like maybe corn, so that we can replace petroleum used and burned in engines. If we start to use these biofuels more, that means that maybe less food might be available later on, right? Ethanol is a biofuel derived from corn. And we were able to double production due to some subsidies. What happened? Food prices increased. The farmers sold corn for ethanol, not food. And farmers planted biofuels in different plants that can be used for biofuels instead of food crops. And this caused some riots in some nations, but it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, right? As we move forward into this exciting new world of being able to maybe sustainably drive our engines and our different motors all across the world, that could cause some problems with actually our food supply in the end too. So sometimes some of these things can be double-edged swords. I hope that you got something out of this lecture, and ask any questions if you have any.